All right, so now we are looking at number 3, the uncontestable thesis. This is on page 120 in your packet. So the uncontestable thesis is one that simply isn't arguable. So it's odd because people do this more than we think. So in order for it to be arguable, you've got to present an idea that someone might reasonably contest, right? So I'm not talking about like you make a thesis and you're like, yeah, somebody could argue that. Well, I mean, like, if you're saying someone with a tinfoil hat could argue it, like how aliens are inside our brains all the time. Like, okay. I mean, no one's going to listen to that, and B, like, it's not really arguable. It's more crazy. And so, like, it has to be something that someone, like, if I were to make the argument that Hitler is a bad person, a reasonable person would say, of course. Someone who is not reasonable in his crazy pants would say, oh, that's bad. No, Hitler's a good person. No, they see, no. That's not what we want. So, you don't want your thesis to be something that, like, repeats, like, being good is good, or bad things are bad. Like, that's not at all, like, it's a universally accepted idea, so it's not even relevant or important. Like, no one could argue against it. So, taking a look at how we might go about doing this. The bad thesis number 1. Teenagers benefit from participating in some form of activities in the summer. No duh. Like, no reasonable adult would say, no, they don't. They should be locked in their room all summer. Like, no one would say that. And if they do, you should probably report them to Child Protective Services. Like, no one's going to argue against that. So instead, you need to consider, what are you actually trying to argue here? What specific activities do you think are most beneficial, for example? So taking a look here, compulsory volunteering, so forced volunteering, should be instituted for young adults. So that's one element here. So that they build an appreciation of their community while also building skills to benefit them in the future. Oh, that's super dark. So, this is a thesis statement that is much more specific. So, compulsory volunteering is much better than some forms of activity. Build an appreciation for their community. That's one benefit. And while also building skills to benefit them in the future, another benefit. So here I've got a paper that's it's 3 sections, so at least 3 body paragraphs. 1, 2, 3. Let's take a look at another uncontestable thesis that is pretty poopy. Protecting young adults from difficulties today will have harmful effects later in their lives. Again, most people would say this is not an arguable thing. To say, like, yes, young adults need to struggle a little bit. They can't be living in a bubble where they don't have a tough time. So, like, this is not a reasonable person would not say, like, yes, do everything for teenagers or young adults and don't let them have any hardships. A reasonable person would not argue against that. So how could you make that argument a little stronger? Look at here. Many parents and guardians succumb to the urge of protecting their teenager from all problems. And while this desire stems from a place of love, it ultimately inhibits the young adult's ability to emotionally and mentally cope with the difficulties of today's society. So here is, like, where I'm clarifying a little bit more about, like, who is protecting, like, they succumb to the urge. So addressing the fact that there's an urge for them to protect, and that urge comes from love, but it's actually bad because it stunts them emotionally and mentally. So like, again, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 different body paragraphs. So I'm going to have a body paragraph about why parents have this urge, or excuse me, when the fact that parents actually do succumb to this. Why do they succumb to this? Why do they even have this urge? What is the emotional problem of this urge, and what is the mental problem of this urge? Again, 4 sections of this thesis, 4 sections of this paper. So I've got at least 4 body paragraphs to develop in this essay. So again, uncontestable thesis is not, we should do things to help children in school. Like, again, no one is going to say, no, we shouldn't help kids in school.